So the play of Purusha and Prakriti, in other words, Maya and Brahm, and it may appear that we have to run from one and towards the other one, but they are one and they are playing with each other in this mighty Leela or the play. So again, the coming lines are also very, very beautiful, where Sri Aurobindo shares the secret knowledge. He talks about the different poises of the relationships of Purusha, Prakriti, soul, nature, Ishwar, Shakti, Shiva, Shakti. So he talks about different poises of the two who are one. And that will come today. So here everything appears to be its finite self, just giving you an overlap. Everything appears fixed in form. Everything here appears its lonely self, or are figures of the soul transcendent one. So if we actually contemplate on these two lines, that all the people or the things which appear so separate from us in their individuality, personality, in their thoughts, opinion, ideas, all of that is a manifestation of only one. There is nothing else but that one. So where can we run to, and from where we can run from? There is no place else but the one. And we are ourselves manifestations of the one. Only by him they are. His breath is their life. This reminded me, which I had shared earlier with you, this uh, story from the Upanishads, where the Devas and Asuras have a war and the Devas have won, and they are in their arrogance having this party that yes, we have won and let us have a party, celebrate. And they have totally forgotten the divine, that it was the divine's presence in them that made them win. And then the divine comes in the form of Yaksha and a beautiful human being, and then a kind of a divine being. And he says that, okay, show me your power. If you can burn this little piece of twig, he tells to the Agni Dev, that if you can burn this little piece of twig, then I will know that you have some power. So the Agni Dev puts out, all the Agni on that little piece of twig, and nothing happens, because it's the power of the divine consciousness that makes even the fire work. But it is not seen, so we ignore it. We don't see its presence there. Only by him they are. Our intelligence, our ideas, our thoughts, our feelings, by whose presence do they manifest? They cannot manifest without the presence of the primordial consciousness, the primordial awareness. We cannot know a feeling at all if the knowing quality is not present. But the knowing is so obscured by the content of all of it that we just completely ignore it. So only by him they are. His breath is their life. An unseen presence molds the oblivious clay. Now the clay, which is the matter, which is the movement of Prakriti, it may appear as if it is oblivious of the presence. That we exist in our own accord, and rest of the world exists is in their own accord. But the closer we get to ourselves, we know that we are creating our reality. There no world, nothing outside there. It's all in here. It's all one being where all it is happening. It may appear a little abstract, but yeah, just trying to put it in the words. And then we closed almost here. The master of being, the Lord, the Supreme, the master of being has come down to her, to Prakriti. He has come down to the knees of Prakriti, that okay, it's your play. I am the force. You play, you manifest it out, and I will be the servant. I am the master of being has come down to her, an immortal child born in the fugitive years, also referring to our souls, that immortal essence that we are, the one that does not die when the body is dead, that takes form in a mortal form, which is contained in time, 80 years, 50 years, even shorter. So immortal child, the soul essence, is born in the fugitive years, years which cannot be trusted. You never know, their life is over. we may think that we are 30, 40s now and we have many years to live, but who knows, the next instant one is gone. Fugitive years, we're kind of, they are always run, kind of ahead of us. An immortal child, the divine presence, the soul consciousness, born in the mortal being, the fugitive years. In objects wrought, in the persons she conceives, the Prakriti. Dreaming, she chases her idea of him. So as Mother and Sri Aurobindo also talk about it, that nature wants through all her experiences, all her manifestations, to bring the divine in its complete essence in the material form. When would that become possible? We don't know. But there is a possibility of that. Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that's what they gave to us, that a new race will be there, which will be complete manifestation of divine, where the divine is not hidden, but is unmasked, right here in front. In objects wrought, in the persons she conceives, dreaming, she chases her idea of him. And even now, if we look at people in our life, each and every individual has a very unique manifestation of the divine presence, very, very unique. And no matter how ugly, how many bad habits a person may have, but something of the truth consciousness will be shining through that person. And that's where the hope is, that even if I may be a sinner for a long time, I can always turn back to that divine essence, turn myself inward to that divine essence. The divine essence is never ever lost. It is untarnished by all the actions. And catches here a look and there a jest. So somehow she's able to accomplish this work of manifesting the divine in matter. She's able to do that. We see beauty in human beings also. We see kindness, compassion, we see generosity, no matter how evil otherwise a person may be, but something or the other still remains, which is worth, that inspirational kind of an attitude. Ever he repeats in them his ceaseless births. And like this, he keeps on taking births in matter, in Prakriti, so that she is able to accomplish this divine work of manifesting the complete divinity in the matter itself, in thoughts, in feelings, in my actions. Thoughts, feelings, and actions don't have to be ugly. Just like 30 minutes of meditation are beautiful, but rest of the life is ugly. That is not our destiny. Our destiny is that even in each and every thought, feeling, dream, non-dreaming, every state has the beauty, power to manifest the beauty. So that's where it is all headed, the whole evolution. So this is where we kind of stopped last time. And please, sometimes I speak too much and it's hard for you to unmute and share, but please do unmute and share whenever you have any reflection. And we'll start taking up the new lines from here. Yeah, anyone who feels ready?
He is the maker and the world he made. He is the vision and he is the seer. He is himself the actor and the act. He is himself the knower and the known. He is himself the dreamer and the dream. Thank you, madam.
So I think the lines are so obvious that hardly anything needs to be said here. He is the maker and the world he made. The creator is not separate from his creation. So if we have to look for the creator, we have to look in the creation. The creator is not lying in some other realm and the creation is abandoned as if, So in my thoughts, in my feelings, in my words, in my actions, that's where the creator lies. The divine lies. He is the maker and the world he made. So he's not separate from the relationships I have. He's not separate from the people I meet. He's not separate from me or my thoughts, feelings, and sensations. He is the maker and the world he made. He is the vision and he is the seer. So he created this vision of this manifestation, and he is the one who is also the witness of all of this happenings, the manifestation. So as if you create something, if imagine that you are an artist and you create a piece of art, you are the creator and you are the one looking at the creation also. You are one with the creation. The creation has no existence separate from you. He is himself the actor and the act. So there is no place we have run to. We have to run to, like run from the world to some forest. And obviously that has advantages also, I believe, that secluded time gives us a deeper connection with ourselves and absolutely necessary. That's why from time to time, Mother and even Shri Aurobindo, took silent retreat times with in their lives, because they have their own importance. The consciousness usually is so scattered and discursive in our day-to-day life. So many things are to be done that in-gathered consciousness appears very challenging. So to in-gather our consciousness, the threads of consciousness, it's important to have those retreat times also. But it's not a matter of running away. It's a matter of understanding them more closely, understanding the nature of the world where we live, nature of my own being. There, these retreat times are really, really helpful. He is himself the actor. So if I say I am suffering today, who is suffering? He himself is suffering through me. That gives a lot of relief, that there is no other person who is suffering. The divine is suffering through me. He is himself the actor and the act. So the stories of my life, the drama of my life, he is one, he is 24/7 participant there, but in oblivion, we don't see him through our mortal eyes. He is himself the knower and the known. What do I know? I know a thought, I know a feeling, I know a story in my head. And who is knowing the story? The knowing present in me is knowing the story. So the knowing is not separate from thought, feeling, and sensation. Just like, giving you another visual which works very beautifully here. The clouds in the sky may be thoughts, feelings, sensations, and the blue sky, which is in the background, may be my knowing, through which I know the clouds. Now, can we say that the clouds are different from the sky? Clouds have no existence apart from the sky. So I am one with my thoughts, feelings, and sensations. But this I realize only when I have disentangled myself from the thought, feeling, and sensations. Usually we live so lost in our dramas that there is hardly a detachment possible. So first there needs to be a disentanglement done, like you step away, stepping back, as Mother says, from the outer surface movements, the thought, feeling, sense perception, stepping away from them, and then owning them fully, that yes, they're happening in this knowing that I am. So I do not need to run away from them. If they are happening in me, they will dissolve in me only. So I am the knower, I am the known. The known is the thought, feeling, the content of consciousness, and the knower is the consciousness itself. He himself is knower and the known. Neti neti also works, and iti iti also works. I am not the feeling, I am not the story, I am not the sensation. You step away and then you own it. Once you are ready in your strength, you say, I am the feeling, I am the thought, I am the sense perception, because there is nothing else except from who I am. So you own it fully, but it needs time. Again, easier said than done. It's a long, long process of a lifetimes. He is himself the knower and the known. He is himself the dreamer and the dream. So this dream of the world, the manifestation, he himself is the dream. and he himself is the dreamer. So where is the separation? From what do I need to run from? That's the beauty. I think when I was reading these lines, it brought a lot of solace to one's being, that there is no place we need to run to. Running from ugly, walking towards beauty, always running from pain, walking to pleasure. So can I just know him in my pain also? I think that would be so, so beautiful and revelatory. Yeah, so I'll just take a pause here, and if anyone has any reflections here.
Hi, Monica, and hi, everybody. And hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Jayashree, please.
Yeah. You said the knower and the knowing, and after that, once we are ready, we can step back and say that I am the feeling, and even if good or bad, we can say that. You made that statement right here. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I have a small experience that I got last week.
Yes, please.
Can I share it?
Please, please, please.
I am participating in an online yoga class. So after 2 days, being an online class, I have rheumatoid arthritis and I have some breathing issues. So I was not able to match with the other people in the yoga class. I was not able to do it very fast. I think the sir forgot what I told him, even what the doctor told him. So he was a little bit. He was telling me that you are not doing it properly and something like that. So in the beginning, what I felt was I was feeling very bad. I went into my, usually what will happen was I will go to my own depressive mood and say, this is what happens and the whole thing. So I thought, okay, well, given my health conditions, I thought maybe I will not go to the yoga class again. I felt it as very childish. So that day I didn't go. Saturday, Sunday, there were no class. And Monday, I was at more ease. Then I was listening to your workshops and again. Then I felt that, no, I'm ready to accept. See, maybe I didn't convey it to him properly. But instead of quitting from that, I should go back to it and then try to do it. If they say that is wrong, I will accept it. Or why do I need their that I'm going it for my health's sake, not for somebody to appreciate. So I just went and I was doing the class, and on that, in the beginning, I was a little bit tense. Then I started doing all the exercises. I don't know from where it came. For one moment, I got the thought, see, why should I care for their appreciation, or even if they are saying something wrong about me, because I'm connected to the Divine Mother, who is the source of everything. So I should be content with what I'm doing, and I should be focusing on my movements so that it will help me improve my health and the breathing issues. So that 1 minute when I really felt good, and I was able to focus on the movements. So I don't know whether it will, but you said that you come out of the feelings. Once you come out of the feelings, it took me about 3 days. But once I came out of the feelings, I felt good, and I continue now with the yoga classes.
Beautiful, beautiful. So powerful.
So, but it is taking a long time.
It does.
But it is not And one more thing I noticed when I'm, when I'm feeling depressed, immediately my body gives me a signal. When I'm trying to take a good step or something positive, also my body has a lot of, it is not cooperating with me. Can that happen?
Yes, absolutely. That can happen, Jayashree ji, because see, the body has been the house for the egoistic consciousness for a long time. We have to know that. So all of us, including myself, we feel as if the ego is the king of this body, right? So
Yes.
it takes a little while the old impressions fade away, and the new lightness and the new simplicity, you get a taste for that, and the body also gets a taste for that. So it's okay to go through that discomfort that you are feeling, but something in us tells us that this is the right way.
Yeah, that, but
Yeah.
till
Yeah.
I get the taste, it will be like this.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
because yesterday I went to Taru's session with lot of, but in the middle of the session, I was listening to everybody. I was feeling very unwell, and I was not able to give my any participate net fully. So then I, because that message, poems she has sent was very beautiful. Uh, so that's what, with lot of expectations, I went. Then I thought, okay, maybe am I attending too many workshops or putting too much in my head, or am I trying to participate and not practicing it? So I was fully confused. And then again, that all those things again got it. So if I take and try to do something, try to change myself in a little, like a baby also, it pulls me down.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Jayashree ji, what pulls us down mostly, in my experience, is
That's the
not the
ego.
outer stuff, but what
Huh.
is going on in my head.
Okay.
So in outer, just like, for example, in outer situation, somebody may have, spewed out anger on me or insulted me, right? But
Yes.
what happens or what pulls me down is not the anger itself, but what goes on about that anger in my head, that, oh my God, how could that person say that to me?
Yes.
I did all the
Yes.
good in my past, time. And, so this is what strains us. I think slowly we have to give importance, as we are learning, through each other. Slowly we have to give importance to our own inner peace and poise. That
Yes.
nothing on earth is more important than my inner sanctity. In front of that, everything is very, very light. Everything can be put at stake, but not the peace inside us.
Yes.
So I think it takes us time. It takes us a little bit of time before we give too much importance and priority to that peace, which earlier we have given to other people, situations and happenings and everything.
Yes.
And include in, when I say other people and situations, include also your thoughts and feelings, because we have given too much importance to our thoughts and feelings. And we don't have to give too much importance to our thoughts and feelings. They mean nothing. They mean really nothing.
Okay.
So to hold them very lightly. It's not that not to have any thought and feeling, but to hold it very lightly, like not to take it seriously. So then it becomes really light. Just like you shared, the example that you shared was so beautiful, in the sense that you were able to step away from your feeling. Yes, you were feeling like that, but you said, okay, I know that I'm feeling like that, but let me do what is worthy of being done.
Yes.
And there you shifted something with it.
Yeah.
So like these baby steps, we go a little ahead. Yeah.
Yes. Thank
So
you very
thank you
much.
for sharing your experience. Yes. Yeah. Anyone else? Anything here? So we'll go further. If not anything, please come up if you have anything to share. So now Sri Aurobindo describes one poise of Purusha Prakriti. Beautiful description here again. Let's go and read it. Yeah. Anyone who feels ready?
There are two who are one and play in many worlds. In knowledge and ignorance they have spoken and met, and light and darkness are their eyes interchange. Our pleasure and pain are their wrestle and embrace. Our deeds, our hopes are intimate to their tale. They are married secretly in our thought and life.
Yeah, so this is so beautiful, and Sri Aurobindo has a few lines on it, which I'll put on screen. I'll just change the screen. Just bear with me for a second. Yeah, so here there is something from Sri Aurobindo. Man, the Purusha. God cannot cease from leaning down towards nature, nor man from aspiring towards the Godhead. It is the eternal relation of the finite to the infinite. When they seem to turn from each other, it is to recoil for a more intimate meeting. I think this can also be shared in what happens in our relationships, that we recoil, but for more deeper, intimate connection many a times. In man, nature of the world becomes, and again, this the last line which I read here, when they seem to turn from each other, it is to recoil for a more intimate meeting. So first I disengage from my thoughts and feelings. I say, I am not the thought, I am not the feeling, I am not the sense perception. I am the one who knows, so I step back. And the more I stabilize myself in the stepping back stance, later I come up with increased love and power to own all the thoughts and the feelings in more intimate way, that yes, I am the thought, I am the feeling, I am the sense perception. So there is a renewed strength within me, which is a non-sticky strength. It does not stick now to the thought and feelings. It knows its own power, and it knows the drama also. So that's the beauty. In man, nature of the world becomes again self-conscious, so that it may take the leap towards its enjoyer. Now, how can I enjoy my thoughts, feelings, and sensations? I can only enjoy them when my completion is not dependent upon them. How can I enjoy a relationship? I can only enjoy a relationship when my completion, my fulfillment is not dependent on a relationship. Otherwise, I will spoil it. We all know, we have been through relationships where we become dependent on each other and we spoil it. We spoil the sanctity of a relationship in trying to fulfill ourselves through the other being. And that never happens. That never has happened and will never happen for anyone. So once I become complete in myself, I become self-conscious of who I am truly, then I can take the leap towards enjoying the world. That's what we call from Maya to Leela, right? This is the enjoyer whom unknowingly it possesses, whom life and sensation possessing deny and denying seek. So it's a hide and a seek kind of going on. Nature of the world knows not God only because it knows itself. When it knows itself, it shall know unalloyed delight of being. The words are a bit tricky, so don't stress yourself too much. Just we'll take the gist and later on you can go through it again. Words of Mother and Sri Aurobindo specifically, he plays around with words really beautifully. So nature of the world, the Prakriti, the nature of the world, manifestation, knows not God only because it knows not itself. When it knows itself, when we become more and more and more conscious of each and every movement, the Prakriti that we are, only then it shall know unalloyed delight of the being. I'm sure all of us have had glimpses of that delight whenever we are able to make a little bit of progress in our life, understanding, becoming more conscious of our being. That delight, that joy is the glimpse that we get. Yeah, and then I want to come here. You can read it later. I can share the link. God and nature are like a boy and girl at play and in love. They hide and run from each other when glimpsed, so that they may be sought after and chased and captured. Again, all of us have experienced glimpses of divine presence. We get glimpses of some knowing we get, and then we lose it. So Prakriti comes into the forefront, thought, feeling, my story, my drama comes to the forefront. And then again, by the event of grace, by happening or something, by own sadhana, something happens and we get a glimpse, and then it's lost again. So, this hide and seek goes on forever. And it's in love that they are playing this hide and seek. So we don't have to get frustrated about this, because Prakriti is also manifestation of Purusha himself. Man is God hiding himself from nature so that he may possess her by struggle, insistence, violence, and surprise. God is universal and transcendent, man hiding himself from his own individuality in the human being. So we don't even know that we are hiding our own divine presence through the movement of thought, feeling, and sensations. So we are our own obstacles, if one can say in that word. Although even those obstacles are divine, if I truly know, slowly through my experiences. So, and towards he end it as, for what do we mean by man? An uncreated and indestructible soul that has housed itself in a mind and body made of its own elements. So where does the God begin and where does the divine end? There is no demarcation we can put here. And that brings a lot of solace and relief, that even the movements of my own thoughts, feelings, and sensations, they are here for a reason. They have a purpose and a role to play. And slowly, when I do neti first, the stepping back, disengaging, and then the full owning, there I can enjoy the life even more. So anything anyone wants to share here? Share any reflection? So I'll continue. There are two who are one. So this is what just we talked about, soul and the nature and the Purusha and the Prakriti. The two who are one and play in many worlds, innumerable worlds. In knowledge and ignorance, they have spoken and met. And light and darkness are their eyes interchange. So not to run away from darkness, not to run towards light, because when I look at the darkness, I am the light. Darkness cannot look at itself. So that only light, only something different from darkness can look at darkness. So if I am able to recognize the darkness in me, if I am able to recognize the weaknesses and uglinesses in me, that's what Mother shares, that notice your weaknesses, uglinesses, so that you can transform it. That's the light of the divine shining in that moment. In knowledge, in ignorance, they have spoken and met, and light and darkness are their eyes interchange. They keep on kind of interchanging. Our pleasure and pain are their wrestle and embrace. So something is processing, something is happening when we are undergoing these tumults of pleasure and pain and all these ups and downs that we go through. Our deeds, our hopes are intimate to their tale. So my imaginations, my dreams, my hopes, my aspirations, my actions, they are not separate from the divine play of Purusha Prakriti. They are married secretly in our thought and life. There is another one way which I want to share here, which can be used to express this marriage. They are married secretly in our thought and life. The moment thought is present, the only focus I have usually is on the thought. I only see a thought, and I am lost in the content of the thought. While parallelly at the same moment, I am aware of the thought. Without awareness of the thought, I can actually not know the content of thought. But this awareness is a secret marriage. It is not very, very obvious. So I miss it, I ignore it. When I become aware of a feeling, although I notice the content of the feeling, okay, it's anger, it's hate, but how do I know the content? Because parallelly I am awareness of the content. But I ignore that I am awareness also. I only focus on the feeling. And that's why stepping back from thoughts and emotions is needed, to notice the presence of awareness. So this secret marriage is 24/7 there. Always awareness is present. That's how I know everything. but the awareness is always masked. The sky is always masked under the presence of clouds. The focus is too much on the content of the cloud. So can I, for a moment, make the focus the awareness that knows the content? And in that, I become very, very light. In that, I immediately step away from my suffering. In that, I immediately step away from my drama. Yes, the drama has not ended. The drama is still going on. But I am something more than the drama. I'm not limited by the story and the drama. So that's the freedom. It's an inner freedom, this stepping back that can give us, or identifying with awareness can give us. This is the inner freedom that we all seek. So this is the secret marriage. I just thought of sharing because this is one way where I see this secret marriage. Anyone, any reflection?
Monica, actually, yeah, that awareness is always that retrospective, no? Actually, when it is happening, as Jayashree also shared, actually, when it is happening, that moment, I feel that awareness is not insisting upon, it, or we are not aware of that awareness.
Yeah.
What is it? Yeah, what is it? Yeah.
Actually, Chitraji, I feel that, see, now that you are saying that when something is happening, we are not focused on the awareness, but the content of awareness, which is my thought, feeling, or whatever, right? But you will also see parallelly that there are many, many moments where you are not too much attached to the content, where you are able to focus on awareness also parallelly and not in retrospect. But having said that, I know, and coming from my personal experiences also, that there are attached spots or soft spots, as I call them. There are a few persons or few life happenings to which we are more attached than the other things. For example, I may not be attached to my children that much. I may be attached to another person in my life, right? But for you, your children are the focus point of your attachment. So when the thought about a child comes, your child comes, you are not able to see yourself as that awareness. You are lost in the drama. And that, I believe, is the challenge that each one of us have in this life. That there, where in the soft spots I lose myself in the drama, can there I know myself as awareness also? So that is our challenge. I think that's the raw material for inner work.
Then we have to again and again go through it. At least afterwards I can do that.
Yes. So first it comes in retrospect, as you say, and then slowly when I'm at it, then slowly in the middle of a situation also maybe a glimpse comes and I'm able to see myself as the awareness rather than losing myself in the content of thought.
Now when you are telling, I can differentiate now. Yes. In certain situation, I can see as an awareness. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, so let's go ahead then. So anyone who feels ready to read the lines here in purple. The universe is an endless masquerade. Anyone who feels ready?
The universe is an endless masquerade, for nothing here is utterly what it seems. It is a dream fact, vision of a truth, which but for the dream would not be wholly true. A phenomena stands out significant against dim backgrounds of eternity. We accept its face and pass by all it means. A part is seen, we take it for the whole.
Yeah, beautiful lines again, and very, very obvious also. Something comes up to you when you read these lines. A part is seen, we take it for whole. All of us would agree with that. how we are blinded by our sense perceptions. And that's what I was sharing, that the more I personally am learning not to take my thoughts too seriously, not to take my opinions too seriously, always kind of, keeping them a little gray. Like although I think like this at this moment, but I'm not really sure, because all that I understand right now is a very, very limited picture of what the total reality, the larger reality is. So not to believe our understanding too much. I think that's where comes also a part where which can say humility, that yes, I see this like this, but I know that there is something more also here, right here parallelly. So humility comes, you become grounded, and you're not up in the air believing too much in your thoughts and opinions and ideas, either about your own self or people or life situations. The universe is an endless masquerade. Masquerade is a kind of a, like a function or a celebration happening where all the people are wearing masks. So the whole universe, the manifestation, is an endless masquerade. Everybody is disguised. Everybody is playing a role, but is actually something else. So everything is happening under the masks. Roles are being played. Every person is playing this and that role in our life, and we are playing roles in somebody else's life. And even when we take the objects, the manifestations in creation, everything appears to play a little significant role here and there, but it is masked. Endless masquerade. For nothing here is utterly what it seems. Something may happen, and it may appear as a tragedy to the society, but only a few of us would be able to see the divine light shining behind that tragedy, because we have very, very limited way of seeing things. So a divorce may happen. People would say, oh my God, so sad a divorce happened. That's how we see the things. But only a few would be able to realize the transformation happening in consciousness through a divorce, for example. Somebody may die. We may lose a child or a loved one. Very, very hard, too painful. But again, just a masquerade. A growth of consciousness is happening through all these seeming tragedies. So that's why many a times God appears to be cruel. Why is God so cruel? My family is scattered, and look, what happened. But we don't know the larger picture. We don't know what that seeming tragedy may have a role to play in the growth of consciousness, because all that matters for the divine is growth of consciousness. For that, every means is allowed. Every means is allowed. Nothing is a tragedy, nothing is a comedy. Everything is allowed for the purpose of growth of consciousness. But we see in a very, very limited manner. We don't see the whole picture. For nothing here is utterly what it seems. So not to believe our sense perceptions. That's why masters and mystics have said that be wary of your senses. Do not truly believe what your senses are saying. Keep a little hanging, kind of loose space. Don't trust your senses fully, because they fool. So if somebody has insulted you, for example, it may appear as an insult, but going deeper, we may see something else emerging. If we have a deeper consciousness, we may see something else emerging. And so grateful that happened, the incident. It is a dream, fact, vision of a truth. So here we come to understanding of Maya in terms of Sri Aurobindo, how Sri Aurobindo talks about Maya. He says, yes, it is a dream, but it is a fact also. It's a dream fact. This world, Shankaracharya would say, this world is an illusion. Yes, it is an illusion, but the illusion is a fact. So otherwise the universe would have been dissolved by now, but it holds itself. It has a dharma, it holds itself. The whole of the dream, the whole of the illusion is held by the divine. So yes, it is a dream, and yet it is factual also. That's how Sri Aurobindo and Mother see it. And that's why we have work to do. That's why we have to improvise. We have to become better and better version of ourselves. It is a dream fact vision of a truth. So there is a vision of truth in the dream also, which but for the dream would not be wholly true. So truth by itself may appear very bland and insipid. It's only because of the manifestation of the dream as this creation that it appears so vibrant, colorful, full of multitudes. Although it is all a dream, there is nothing solid about it, yet it is real. So can I work now? Can I use this raw material as the raw material for the growth of consciousness? Because once I know it as dream, then I begin to take it a bit lightly. Not know it intellectually, like realize it in my being. Realize it. That's what we call self-realization, that you know that something else is more powerful and stronger than what appears to be. And then when you hold your stance there in that consciousness, divine consciousness, then you can work on thoughts and feelings and sensations, right? So when I know that, oh, it's not a matter much, it doesn't matter much if I this happen or that happens, then you can work on it. Then it's not like your life is not at stake, because you know that your life is more than the thoughts, feelings, and sensations. So that's where Mother and Sri Aurobindo would say that nirvana is not the last step of integral yoga. Nirvana means liberation from the knot of ego. Nirvana is the first step of integral yoga. That is, when I know myself something beyond thought, feelings, and sensations and my this little individuality, then I get the power of self-mastery. Now I can work on my thought, feelings, and sensations, because I know that I'm more than that. So there is a confidence within. You're owning your being. Now the king can work in his kingdom. So that's the beauty. That's the beauty of integral yoga, that it is a lifelong commitment, lifetimes of a commitment. So for many other yogas, things end at nirvana. Okay, moksha. You are liberated from the knot of ego now. You are done. But here, liberation from the knot of ego is the first step to own the kingdom and then to transform the kingdom. That's why Mother stresses upon the finding of the psychic being, the inner discovery, because only then the self-mastery can come, right? A phenomenon stands out significant against dim backgrounds of eternity. We accept its face and pass by all it means. A part is seen, we take it for the whole. So phenomenon is something which is limited by time. Okay, 2:30 it starts, 2:45 it ends. So it's a phenomenon, it's limited, it's finite. So we see, the way we see the limited conceptual mind, the way it looks at things is in a very, very limited manner, categorizes, boxes everything. So a phenomenon is seen. Okay, a person life started 2nd October 1942 and it ended this. So this is the phenomenon that we are seeing. And we are not able to fathom the meaning beyond the finite ends that we see. So a phenomenon, the limited view that we see through our senses, stands out significant. It has very, very strong importance for me, like the dates of our marriage, the dates of our birth and all that, they're very, very strong significance for us. A phenomenon stands out significant against dim backgrounds of eternity. Now, eternity is timelessness. It's immutable. It is the largest picture, but we are not able to see that. Our gaze is focused on that little thing that is right here in front of me. And that's where I lose myself again and again. That becomes too important. I lose the larger picture again and again. And that's why the power of remembrance, that come back to your true nature, come back who you truly are. Know yourself as something more than thought, feelings, and sense perceptions. So this coming back to our true self is very important, because we lose ourselves in the drama again and again, become very, very limited again. We accept its phase and pass by all it means. We don't really fathom the meaning that it portrays. We lose itself, our focus in the drama. A part is seen. We take it for the whole. So for now, whatever I am understanding is just a part, nothing but a grain of sand in the whole vast ocean of understanding. So to hold my understanding very, very relatively and loosely, not to cling to it in absolute terms, because clinging is the cause of suffering. All of us have experience of that. When we cling to ideas, when we cling to opinions, when we cling to feelings, thoughts, sensations, and non-clinging is liberation. In one moment, if I'm not clinging, I'm free, I'm Kabir. And in the other moment, if I fall into clinging and grasping again, I'm not Kabir. So in one moment, divine, and in the other moment, again, something really, I cannot call it non-divine because everything is divine, but I guess you get the meaning. So we keep on going from infinite to finite, like a pendulum. We keep on switching unless we gain stability in our experience. And it's all a process. All of us have a process, and we must respect that process as well. Yeah, anything here?
Yeah, I think that I don't know. The lines have so much in them. I think hours and hours can be spoken on them. And thank you for the beautiful description. It's just this whole thing about how your whole life feels like an illusion, and yet you're supposed to take it as real. And the distinction between dreams and our so-called real life. Like once I was hearing a mystic, and in his discourse he said that if we have some experiences, like all of us have had some experiences, something in the dream or say during meditation, anything, a realization, somehow we tell ourselves that's not real, and this is my real life. And that's how we discount things, that the universe is trying to tell us something, or we are supposed to go somewhere. But because we don't give it its importance, we don't even equate it, we just say, oh, that I don't even know if it happened. So he said that when you give it equal importance, like it's as real as say you're eating something right now, is when the life begins. It's when it starts getting interesting, and you start seeing more, you start hearing more, you start being more than just the limited self that you are so used to. And this whole the dream, fact, vision of truth, and nothing is utterly what it seems. Even in the harmony circles, we discuss it so many times, that how if there are 4 people, say for example, fighting, for all 4 of them, they have their own version of truth. And how can truth have versions, right? So nothing that I'm actually saying or doing has any truth in it. Yes, it appears, yet it appears to be truth. And that's a relative truth. So, I mean, I don't know what that really means, but then you can just, even wondering on these aspects is pretty intriguing. It's pretty, it opens something. Okay, you don't know the answers, but just I don't know, these questions also make you something bigger than what you're used to in your, I would say, the everyday rat race.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and how these things also about when we talk about eternity, there are so many videos, right? That this is the universe and this is the Milky Way, and right, like this is and this is where you are. So when we talk about eternity or my life or my pain or my suffering, I mean, the contrast sometimes is very amusing, right? Like it feels so real. It feels my world is crumbling down.
Yeah.
And yet there are, I live in an apartment complex that I don't know, 6,000 more people, and there are so many apartment complexes and stuff, and so many people. It's just like, the enormity of the, I don't know, immensity of things and the littleness of things. And yet I am the most important person in my life. and everything has to circle around me.
Yeah.
It's just, it's very, I don't even know what word to use.
Yeah, I think that your sharing reminded me of something a friend had shared, that if one is overwhelmed by a story, drama, or a pain in one's life, to in Art of Living, they suggested to kind of imagine yourself going away from Earth and looking from space at yourself, and then further going back, and then you appear just like a dot, and to see your story from that place. So it appears very ridiculous then, if we look at that enormity, that our pain or the solidity that we give to our story becomes so overwhelming. We all live that suffering, and yet it's actually nothing, nothing in front of the enormity of eternity. Then things become lighter actually, if we look at it. Yeah. But many a times we lose it.
Yeah, because somehow the juice is in the stories, right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't, even if we look at our lives, we don't usually look at facts, right? So that we can move beyond them. We are lot of times so, I don't know, overtaken by this and that we don't actually see what's happening.
Yes.
So
I
again,
think,
the last, yeah, sorry.
yeah, it's just, what you said was, it's almost like abuse of our imagination power. That's what we do all the time. We are just imagining about things and holding that imagination to be real. Like, this is what it is, this is what I feel, and this is how it is. And we make it very, very solid by feeding it again and again, again and again. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, I was saying, a part is seen where it said we take it for the whole, right? Like, my truth is the truth, right? Like, there are 4 people again, and they're all okay. Maybe I can accept that they're all right, but I am righter, right? Like, I am where I am standing, that thing has kind of the best view. Like, there's something in me which keeps wanting to believe that, that about,
Yeah.
and the divisions and everything.
Yeah. I think something from Tenzing Palmo has also kind of stuck with me, although she talks about not clinging, but that has stuck to me. And that is, that we cling too badly, as you're saying, that my truth is more holier than thou truth. So I think this, the idea of clinging that is there in my life, if I can just look at it and how it makes me suffer when I cling to my truth, and when I hold, even if I loosen the grip a little, I think the breath of air that it creates is unmistakable. Not to just hold it very tightly, but hold it very loosely and gently. Yeah.
Yeah, and just one last thing on this, that about
Please.
just from her only, from Tenzin Palmo, she had once spoken about thoughts, how they are just, basic impulses in the brain, and we hold on to them and sit on them like, this is my thought, this is my thought. And as you were saying, it's like, if a lot of time it has happened that something happened, and then you go back to the person and say, this happened, how could you do this or whatever, and the other person is like, but I didn't do that, I was here. And that whole thing on which we based our stories, the grounds don't have solidity, and yet so many things are built. And if, then again you start questioning the truth. What is truth, or what am I building my life around? And I think, again, I'll stop now because it's an endless discussion. What amazing, I don't know, choice of words, and so powerful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I think we all have to, it's almost a birthright, we need to partake of this inner freedom that comes by just losing our grip on what Taru was sharing, my thought, my truth, my story. If we can just loosen it a little bit, not even fully giving it up, kind of just loosening it, like holding it very, very lightly, just like we hold water in the palms. I think there we get a breath of fresh air. That it's okay. It's okay, even if one is not right and one is wrong. How does it matter? How does it matter? So it's beautiful how really it works. And yet it eludes us again and again. So just taking up these last few lines and then we can end. Or maybe let us cover until here. Yeah, the yellow lines. Anyone who feels.
Thus have they made their play with us for roles, author and actor with himself as seen. He moves there as the soul, as nature, she here on the earth where we must fill our parts. We know not how shall run the drama's course. Our uttered sentences were in their thought.
Yeah. So again, the beauty of these lines is just almost like, one, many a times there are poems, and in poems there is one or two lines which is beautiful. So you can hold it, but the beauty in Savitri is like every line is potent and pregnant with this beauty and meaning, so profound, so much of delight just to even go through them. Thus have they made their play with us for roles, author and actor with himself as seen. So everything is him. Everything is one divine. And as if roles are being played, as we were discussing, he moves there as the soul, as nature, she. So our inclinations, our tendencies, our patterns, our natural gifts, abilities, that is the movement, that is the flow. That's what we call as nature. That's manifesting itself out as individuality. And he is sitting there silently as the soul consciousness. And he accepts the dominance of nature. He accepts the dominance of her beloved, his beloved, that yes, you be the boss and I will be there, in disguise. He moves there as the soul, as nature, she. Here on earth, where we must fill our parts. So each sentient being has a role, very, very unique role to play. And that unique, so one may be playing like parallelly 10 different roles in one's life. So you play one bit here, you play one bit in another drama, and another drama you have one bit to play. So as if we are playing multiple roles, each one of us. And although we utter out our dialogues, but we don't know the whole plot. You know about big movies, how the actors are given their dialogues. So if there is a very large movie, very huge movie that is being made, little roles would not have the complete plot. They would, the only complete plot is known by the director or the main actor or the producer. Only that person knows the whole plot. The little actors in the movies, what they do is they come out when the director calls them and they play their roles out, they say their dialogue out, and then they're out from the scene. Although that dialogue has very, very important relevance in the whole larger picture, but the actor does not know that relevance. The actor knows only what he speaks. Okay, this is my script. This is what I have to say today. Okay, this is how I have to kick a person today. That's what he knows. So that's the beauty of these the roles. We know not how shall run the drama's course. We have no idea of the larger picture. So to be humble about that, to know that we don't know the whole picture. Our uttered sentences, the dialogues that we say, the roles that we play, veil in their thought. They don't know whatever we are saying, the dialogues that we are saying. We don't know the meaning of those dialogues in the larger picture. And yet we continue playing these roles in our ignorance. So in ignorance also, something is happening. Growth of consciousness is happening. So ignorance is half lit. It's not completely dark, it's half lit. Roles, the action of consciousness, the action of Purusha Prakriti is manifesting itself out in even those ignorant dialogues. That's the beauty. That's the beauty. So the divine is never away from us. In each and every insignificant looking detail of our life, it's the play of the divine. And it brings us a great solace if we contemplate on even this little fact. Immediately, a great liberation happens for a moment. We may get tied up again, that's a different matter, but we do get a breather there. Yeah. So shall we stop there? Is it okay?
Yeah, Monica, there is a beautiful paragraph in Synthesis of Yoga about the Purusha and Prakriti.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is from the Supreme Will chapter. But what has fixed the modes of nature, or who has originated and governs the movements of force? There is a consciousness or a conscient behind, that is the Lord, witness, knower, enjoyer, upholder, and source of sanction for our works. This consciousness is soul or Purusha. Prakriti shapes the action in us. Purusha in her or behind her witnesses, assents, bears, and upholds it. Prakriti forms the thought in our minds. Purusha in her or behind her knows the thought and the truth in it. Prakriti determines the result of the action. Purusha in her or behind her enjoys or suffers the consequence. Prakriti forms mind and body, labors over them, develops them. Purusha upholds the formation and evolution and sanctions each step of her works. Prakriti applies the will force which works in things and men. Purusha sets that will force to work by his vision of that which should be done. This Purusha is not the surface ego, but a silent self, a source of power, an originator and receiver of knowledge behind the ego. Our mental eye is only a false reflection of this self, this power, this knowledge. This Purusha or supporting consciousness is therefore the cause, recipient, and support of all nature's works. But he is not himself the doer. Prakriti, nature force in front, and Shakti, conscious force, soul force behind her. For these two are the inner and outer faces of the universal mother. Account for all that is done in the universe. The universal mother, Prakriti Shakti, is the one and only worker.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this
So
is
which chapter it is?
It is Supreme Will.
Okay, I will share it with others also. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
This only should in the beautifully brought out in poetical lines in Savitri.
Yeah. Very powerful. And I think, Chitraji, what comes to me again and again, reading words of Mother Sri Aurobindo and also other masters, I think one thing which strikes me nowadays specifically is that this has to happen with us.
Yeah, definitely.
Intellectually, we are understanding it. Intellectually, we feel that there is a truth here. But it has to happen in our beings. We have to begin to live as that consciousness.
Yeah, that is the thing. Actually, when we read again and again, that feeling is automatic actually, whether we are following it, whether we are doing our actions from that awareness. This question is always arising actually. That is the effect.
Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica, and also in the sessions.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. Thank you for joining. Yeah. Anything more? Anyone? I didn't ask. Sorry. if anyone has anything to share, please share. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay then. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Monica.
Bye-bye.
Bye.